So we have a rematch here of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2019 as you have the number 4 Boston Bruins going up against the number 6 Carolina Hurricanes. We'll be taking a look at this series, how both teams fare head to head in this matchup. We'll be taking a look at that in this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. And let's take a look at this rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals from 2019 between the Boston Bruins and the Carolina Hurricanes. So we are looking at an old Patrick Division matchup back in the day, as the Carolina Hurricanes used to be the Hartford Whalers, and then obviously the Boston Bruins. That was a pretty solid rivalry, and since the Carolina Hurricanes have moved down to Raleigh there in North Carolina, the rivalry of the organization still lives on. This last season, the Carolina Hurricanes went on a dream run. They went through the Washington Capitals, at the time the defending Stanley Cup champions. The New York Islanders, a really solid matchup and a really defensive team. And then they would go to take on the Boston Bruins, where unfortunately they got swept and they got beat in a pretty convincing fashion. This year, the Carolina Hurricanes hope to turn the tables. And looking at this series, it's definitely interesting to see how the seeding works, but I like the odds here, and we'll be taking a look at that for the Carolina Hurricanes. So, just to look at brief context of how these teams have done so far in the, since they have come back into the NHL. Now, you've got the top 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference, as you've got the Philadelphia Flyers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Washington Capitals, and the Boston Bruins. And the Boston Bruins were actually first going into this round robin. They dropped all the way to 4th. There was some talk in the offseason about Bruce Cassidy kind of letting the guys maybe not playing, or just letting off the gas. It doesn't matter, just get into the playoffs, don't get hurt. And that's kind of what we saw. Not to mention there was also some interesting issues with guys, multiple players, a dozen players being scratched at a certain time, possibly because of a certain sickness, possibly. Obviously, we don't know all the details, so I'm not going to speculate here, but there's been a couple of distractions here for the Boston Bruins since they have come back into play, and that showed. They went 0-3 in their first 3 games here in the round robin. They lost to all 3 teams. They did not take a lead in any of those 3 games, and their penalty kill was awful. Their power play was awful. Their power play went 0-9 in those 3 games. Yikes. And the goaltending really didn't look that great for the Boston Bruins. It was really a struggle for the Boston Bruins here in the round robin. And hopefully they could turn things around, because they got the Carolina Hurricanes, who just came off kind of a glory run, beating the number 7 New York Rangers, kind of taking King Henrik off, probably for his last time, taking him off the pedestal. They really did a nice job. They swept the New York Rangers, and that top line for the Carolina Hurricanes is going to be put to the test. I mean, you look at that top line, you've got Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, and Teuvo Teravainen, and I believe Sebastian Aho, I think he had like 8 to 13. I think Svechnikov had 8 points in those 3 games. Svechnikov, I think, had 13 points in those 3 games, and Teravainen had a couple of points as well. So really, it was a struggle for the entire series for the Rangers. And the Boston Bruins, they're in for a heck of a series here. Now, the good news for the Boston Bruins is they have everybody calls them the perfection line. You've got Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, and David Pastrnak. And that's probably one of the best lines in the NHL. And that's going to be stiff competition for that Carolina Hurricanes offensive core to try and shut down. That will not be easy. Not to mention, you look at both blue lines, they're both pretty solid. The Carolina Hurricanes, despite not having a guy like Dougie Hamilton there due to injury, they still look really solid. I mean, you've added guys like Brady Shea, Sami Vatanen, they all looked really solid in that qualifying round against the New York Rangers. So this is a really good matchup here, I think, for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the big thing here, and it's kind of the same for both sides, and I always talk about this in every series. Goaltending. Goaltending is so important, and it doesn't seem like for either of these teams they have a full-on starter. Now, I'd like to think for the Boston Bruins it will be Tuukka Rask, but Yaroslav Halak has definitely given himself an opportunity to, if Rask does not play well in Game 1, we very likely, as soon as Game 2, could see Yaroslav Halak as the starter. And I really like how the Carolina Hurricanes have done things as well. We saw Peter Mrazek get the first 2 wins, and he and then we saw James Reimer come in and clean things up in Game 3. And now he will be starting Game 4 as well. So Rod Brind'Amour definitely has a different approach to how he runs his goaltending tandems. We saw him do that last season as well. We'll see if that momentum keeps up for the Carolina Hurricanes. I like the odds of the Hurricanes in this series. They just have some really, really good guys on that group that really showed up. The issue I have with the Hurricanes, though, can those depth lines get things going? Guys like Jordan Staal, Warren Fogle, Justin Williams, are they going to be able to produce in the bottom 6? I think that's going to be the difference maker in this series for the Carolina Hurricanes. Get that extra depth. The Boston Bruins have some really solid depth in their blue line, guys, on their forward core. Guys like Charlie Coyle, Danton Heinen, Jake DeBrusk. They've got some really solid players in that group. So the Carolina Hurricanes have their hands full with the forward group, but I really like the Carolina Hurricanes defense. And what do I always say? Defense wins championships. And the goaltending, as long as it continues to stay as hot as it did in that series against the Rangers, I have no reason to think that the Carolina Hurricanes cannot beat the Boston Bruins in 5 games. I think they win the series 4-1. I like their odds. I really like what they've done. The Boston Bruins, I don't know, they just look really out of sync right now. That could easily turn as soon as Game 1. They score that first goal, and all the momentum and all the confidence goes back into that Bruins team. But if not, this could be in for a very short series. Maybe a sweep, maybe 5 games. I give them 5 games. I give them the respect because the Bruins are that good of a team. But based off of how they look so far, yikes, this could be a really interesting series. So comment down below. What do you think of this series between the Boston Bruins and the Carolina Hurricanes? Do you agree with me that the Carolina Hurricanes could get things done in 4 or 5 games? Or do you think the Boston Bruins will find a way to claw their way back? They kind of let off the gas in the round robin, and you think they'll be ready to go here in the playoffs? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.